others are used to listening, so that's Tov. You're going to have to listen, because if you don't listen, you're not going to learn. And I'm not going to repeat, because some of the stuff is boring. But the end result is that you need to know what I'm sharing if you want to be a strong Talmid or a strong Talmidah in Yeshua. But some of it, admittedly, is boring. Okay? All right? Because when you read stuff, it can get boring, let's be honest. It's a lot easier for me to go, all right, and everybody's awake, but in some cases, that's not advantageous. So, turn off your sound machines at home. Stop working. Yahweh knows exactly what's going on over there. You went shopping this morning and you're catching up on your laundry now. Turn off the radio. I don't want you listening. You're a hypocrite. Unless you're new in the faith. Then Yahweh's going to cut you some slack. But if you've been knowing this stuff for 10 years, what Torah teaches, and you're still working on Shabbat, go ahead. Dial out. I don't want you listening to this broadcast. Because it's going in through one ear and out the other. Is that a way to make friends and influence people? Now, I'm not talking about a new believer. Yahweh gives them time to grow in grace and chesed and rachamim. All right, so let's get into some of the facts. So this message, let's call, for lack of a better term, let's call this message 22. The number 22. Okay? Okay. A lot of it's going to be reading from the Aramaic New Testament, and then I'm going to share some things from the actual scriptures. Semitic culture and language carries little-known ancient tradition that involves the canon of the original Tanakh, together with the renewed covenant writings that illustrate perfect harmony. This convergence cannot be coincidental, as we see in the writings of Josephus. Who was Josephus? The ancient Jewish historian who lived around the time of Yeshua, and he accurately recorded history around the time of Yeshua. Okay? He's one of the most reliable historians that ever lived. Very, very reliable. He was neither in favor of Rome, nor was he in favor of the Jewish leadership. He was a historian who was more or less neutral in the things he wrote. Now here's what Josephus, Flavius, the Jews called him Flavius. They don't waste time with Josephus. When somebody says, well, doesn't Josephus or Josephus, they give away their Christian identity. Josephus. A Jew would never say Josephus. Josephus. Never. My father knew about Josephus. I never heard him say the word Josephus. Even Josephus. No, Flavius. When the Jews talk about this man, it's Flavius. Okay? We have not, he said this in his writing, we have not an innumerable multitude of books among us, disagreeing from and contradicting one another, as the Greeks have. I said as the Greeks have. Right. But in other words, all the Greek books are messed up, they contradict each other. But we only have 22 books. So again, I've entitled this message, Preaching for a Limited Space of Time. 22, and that's it. So the Flavius said that the Yehudim at the time of Yeshua had 22 books, which contain the records of all the past times, and are justly believed to be divine. So according to the Yehudim and Josephus, there were only 22 books that were considered to be inspired by the Ruach HaKodesh. Now how many books do we have today in the Tanakh?
39. 27.
No, in the Tanakh. 39, 37? Okay, at the time of Yeshua it was 22, which are fully believed to be divine. And them 5 belong to Moshe, which contains his laws and traditions of the origin of mankind till his death. This interval of time was little short of 3,000 years. But up to the time of Yeshua that Flavius was writing. But as to the time from the death of Moshe until the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, who reigned after Xerxes, that's right around the time of the book of Esther, by the way. The prophets who were after Moshe wrote down what was done in their times in 13 books. The remaining 4 books contain hymns to Elohim and precepts for the conduct of human life. It is true our history has been written since Artaxerxes, meaning the Jewish Persian captivity, the time of Esther, very particularly since that time, but has not been esteemed of like authority with the former by our forefathers, meaning it didn't have the same authority as the Torah, because there has not been an exact succession of prophets since that time. And how firmly we have given credit to these books of our nation is evident by what we do. For during so many ages as have already passed, no one has been so bold as either to add anything to them or to take anything away from them, or to make any change to them. But it has become natural to all Jews immediately and from their birth to esteem these books to contain divine doctrines and to persist in them, and if occasion be willingly to die for them. Modern reckoning counts 39 books for the Tanakh, but according to the Josephus Flavius, at the time of Yeshua, there was only 22 books in the Tanakh. Let's begin first with the 5 books of Moshe. Now you'll see why this is important. So again, this message is entitled 22. 22. What's the name of this message?
22.
22. You'll see that shortly, why it's important. Flavius is an amazing historian because he recorded the wars of the Jews between the Jews and the Romans, the Jewish wars and then the antiquities of the Jews and other recorded books. It's one of the few really reliable historians that we have from the time of Yeshua, right around the 1st century. And what he says is very, very accurate. And at the end of Flavius, one of his books, he talks about the man. Okay, he says that there was a man who arose among us. Some believed he was the Christ. And he did many miracles and signs and wonders, and his disciples and his followers remain among us until this day. He didn't call him Yeshua. He said the man, this man who was risen up among us, who many consider to be the Christ. So in Hebrew, even today in Judaism, when there's arguments, there's debates on Josephus, Flavius, if this man he's referring to is really Yeshua or some other man. But we know it's the miracles and the signs and the wonders that Yeshua did. It could be referring to no one else. So Flavius calls him the man. Why he calls him the man and not using his name, we don't know. But he says these things that are believed among us. So something that caused some to think that Flavius was a disciple. These things that are sure. I can get you the exact quote if you're interested. But no one's 100% sure. Most people think that he was not a disciple, but merely a historian who recorded the wars against Rome and other things at the time of Yeshua. Okay, so modern reckoning counts 39 books for the Tanakh, but originally, as I mentioned, it was 22. Let's begin with the first 5 books of Moshe. 5 belong to Moshe, which